justice for all.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the May 20th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. We have two items under appearances tonight. The first is a proclamation declaring June 19th, 2019 as Juneteenth in the city of Monona, which I will read. Whereas word about the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863 was delayed some 2.5 years to June 19th, 1865, in reaching authorities and African Americans in the South and Southwestern United States, and whereas for more than 150 years, Juneteenth continues to be the most recognized African American holiday observance and also is known as Emancipation Day and Freedom Day, and whereas Juneteenth celebrates the freedom and achievement of Black Americans while encouraging continuous self-development and respect for all cultures, and whereas it is important to continue a dialogue of the realization of what Juneteenth historically means to all Americans to promote racial healing, reconciliation, restoration, and justice. Now therefore I, Mary O'Connor, Mayor of Monona, Wisconsin, in collaboration with the Monona City Council, do hereby declare June 19th, 2019 as Juneteenth in the city of Monona. Signed in the city of Monona, Dane County, Wisconsin, this third day of June 2019, Mary Kay O'Connor, Mayor. And thank you, Alder Group B, for working on this proclamation. Next item under appearances, we have a appearance by Steve Steinhoff of the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission, and former Alder Peter McKeever is going to introduce him.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it very much. As some of you may know, I'm a member of the Capillary Regional Planning Commission. I'm the vice chair. I'm an appointee of Joe Parisi, the county executive. I've been on the planning commission for, I don't know, something like 10 or 12 years at this point. Throughout that time, I've been interested in the notion of how do we come up with a consensus view of what our community can be in the future. And by our community, I mean Dane County. We've got at least 63 taxing jurisdictions. We've got almost 500,000 people. And where I sit and watch, I see communities competing with each other for developments, for business parks and things like that. And when one community has that, for whatever reason, it has significant impact on other communities in transportation and housing and things like that. And we've all been working for some time to see if we couldn't come up with a way to develop some kind of a vision for our community, this region, that has a consensus. Not everybody's going to agree with it, but there's some values, I think, underlying all that for which we can find consensus. And that's been the notion. So to get at that, CARPC conducted a survey under the title of the a Greater Madison Vision, and Steve will tell you more about that. The results are, I think, remarkably consistent with what I see this city and this council working on in terms of sustainability, in terms of transit, in terms of housing, in terms of the values of this community. Many of those same values, I think, are reflected in the findings of the survey. I'll let Steve get into those in detail, but I really wanted to urge you as local leaders to pay some attention to these findings and to incorporate them into what our community does here in Monona as we're planning and as we make decisions. A Greater Madison Vision, and you'll see the list of participants in the material that Steve handed to you on the back, a broad cross-section of leadership in our community are participating in this process and are providing the guidance for it. I think that's important. I think that's the kind of leadership we need, but I think local officials have to step up and be part of that. So I really encourage you all to participate. We are a unique community in many respects in the county in that we're landlocked. So we have a different set of issues facing us in terms of development and redevelopment, in terms of growth. There's this inevitable tension between growth and quality of life, and how do we manage that? How do we find the balance between those two things? I think the survey results on regional growth give us some indication of how we grow and what values are underlying that. So I'll turn it over to Steve Steinhoff. He's the Executive Director of the CARPC, the Capillary Regional Planning Commission. He leads the staff of what we're doing and helps keep the 13 commissioners informed and advised on what's going on. But this whole notion of a survey, I think, drew a lot of inspiration and motivation from the members of the commission, which I will say is a remarkably collegial public body. But we represent towns, cities and villages, the city of Madison and the county. It's the only forum where those four entities really get together around the same table and discuss issues of common interest. So I think this survey helps build on that and helps build us, push us in the right direction. So I'll let Steve carry on with the results of the survey. Steve?
Thank you, Commissioner Redeemer. Hi, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to share the
AV team, could you
results
switch over to the monitor?
of the Greater Madison Vision Survey with you tonight. Again, my name is Steve Steinhoff, the Agency Director for the Capillary Regional Planning Commission. So the goal was both tonight for me to share the results of the survey and also to encourage you to think, as I'm doing that, about how you might be able to use them. That's our overall goal of going out and making a variety of presentations to a variety of different communities, because we want to put these survey results to work. So I guess it's interesting that because it's a PDF and not a PowerPoint, I guess it doesn't fill up the whole screen, so I'll just scroll and we'll make that work. But first, a quick overview. The CARPC, as we're known, the Capillary Regional Planning Commission, is one of 9 RPCs in the state. And RPCs are generally formed when local units of government get together and recognize that they have challenges that go beyond their borders, that require collaboration, cooperation with surrounding communities and communities throughout the region. So they petition the governor to establish RPC. And one of the key charges to RPCs and why we started this whole initiative of a Greater Madison Vision is that we're charged under state statutes with the function and duty of making and adopting a master plan for the physical development of the region. This hasn't been done in our region since 1997, so we're way behind the times, and we're really trying to get back in the groove of regional planning, creating a vision and plan that guides local decision making. In the past, when these types of efforts were done, it was more of experts coming up with options, holding public hearings, looking at past trends, projecting them forward, and saying, these are our recommendations, and the people who show up to the public hearings are the ones who give input. And over time, planning has really changed a lot. I'm sure you experienced that when you went through a recent update of your comprehensive plan, I think was in 2016. So some of the key changes based on experience of looking around the country, seeing what works in other regions, doing research, is that it's not enough really just to have a governmental body itself come up with a plan and bestow it upon the region. It's important, one, to have broad sector leadership, and Commissioner McKeever referred to the list of participants that have been involved in this effort for the past 3 to 4 years, really. So it's business leaders, nonprofit leaders, and coming together with government that's really builds the buy-in and support that it takes if you come up with a vision that's going to be carried out. Secondly, I referred to the past about looking at trend lines, projecting them out, and saying, well, this is going to be the future. I think we all know we live in a time of much more disruptive change with environment and climate change and technology, population growth and change and migration and government, that we can't just project out trend lines and have much confidence if at all, that will be the future. So we engaged in a process we call driving forces of change, doing workshops and going to a variety of different events and tables where we talked with people about what do they see are going to be the big forces that are going to shape our future, which ones are more likely, which ones are going to be more impactful, how can we better prepare and respond to those that are going to be particularly impactful and likely to affect us in our region. And we took all that input, worked with the steering committee to come up with alternative possible futures based on how these different forces might play out. And we we launched a survey starting last fall to get input from the public about what they see as the priorities for the future. And we presented these 4 what-if scenarios. And as Commissioner McKeever explained, not only is it important to bring together a broad base of leadership, but it's also important to hear as much from the public participating as possible. So we really set out to get as many people to take the survey as possible. The City of Monona was a great partner in that. The Voice of Monona Radio put out spots. The Monona Grove High School was an active participant. So we got a great turnout participation from Monona. And one of the ways we did that was through, as I mentioned, Monona Grove High School. We put an emphasis on youth involvement because high school students don't typically participate in these kinds of efforts, but in the planning horizon we're looking at, 2040, 2050, it's not likely to be many of us still sitting at this table. I know I won't be myself. They're the ones who are going to be sitting at making the decisions. So it's important. We felt it was important to have their voice heard. We created a youth incentive program. We gave cash prizes to youth groups that generated the most number of surveys. That's a picture from Wanakee High School where all the students there also took the survey. So we did have good youth participation. And because we have a broad base of leadership and business support, we were able to develop some marketing funds for this effort and outreach engagement funds from some important partners and sponsors that we really thank. And so as a result of all that was we got more than 9,000, almost 9,200 people who took the survey, which as far as I know has not really been done in our region before. There were about 8,700 something from the 8-county region, about 8,300 something from Dane County. More than 2,100 people submitted comments. And how did the survey work? So as I mentioned, we presented these 4 alternative futures. Each one was as I said, is a what-if scenario. What if communities in the regions focused their resources on one big area of change? Whether it be population growth and change, and that was the communities scenario, technology change, things like autonomous vehicles, artificial intelligence, and who knows what else coming down the pike, was the innovation future, changes in state, federal government, declining ability to, because of frankly dysfunction, to support local communities. So this was more of a communities having to more go it alone and be more self-reliant. And finally, one focus on climate change was the conservation scenario. So each scenario presented a little description and 4 possible strategies that could communities could take to respond to those. And all the strategies were pulled from all the workshops and the community engagement, stakeholder involvement that we had in the year prior to this. People were asked to rank order and priority from top to bottom. Each of those four strategies, from most important to least important. And after they went through all 4 scenarios, and they generated a list of 16, top to bottom, and with the top ranked top, the lowest at the bottom, and you could make final adjustments up and down. So everyone generated a priority list of 16 strategies, and that we were able to aggregate for the region as a whole and for subgroups. And people picked the growth option out of 4 different maps of how growth could occur, where could it go, what type of, for example, transit improvements might be part of that. And then there were data indicators about what the performance would be for each of those scenarios in terms of things like household energy and transportation costs, infrastructure costs, greenhouse gas emissions generated, how much more or less households that have to drive, things like that. So who took the survey? We felt, as I mentioned, we did a lot of outreach, and a lot of our outreach was targeted to traditionally underrepresented groups. Tabling at the job center, for example, the youth and the youth incentives I mentioned, even going to getting surveys from the jail, tabling at the Hmong New Year's, lots of events like that. So we had a pretty good representation by age. As you can see, the breakdown there. Actually, and in the youth, we're in fact a little over represented, but that's okay. Race, it's always challenging to get a representative sample in public surveys like this, but we were able to do a reasonably good job, I think. In Dane County, 83% of the survey takers were white, compared to 80% of the population of Dane County. Geography was pretty well distributed. Rural, for example, 10% pretty much matches the county population, and the outlying areas were actually more represented than their population represents, which was again part of our efforts to do a lot of outreach, and figuring that the central Isthmus neighborhoods in Madison, were probably going to participate in large numbers no matter what we did. So we focused our efforts a little bit more on the outside. So what did we find? What did we hear? What were some of the key findings? And after a lot of analysis of looking at those priorities and the comments, we saw and looking at patterns, they came out to sort of these 8 key findings. One is that environmental challenges, including climate change, increased risk of flooding, are a top priority for the region. And this comes from these top 2 ranked strategies: more renewable energy and green infrastructure. So these charts show, I don't know, will this work? Pointer thing. Oh, yeah. So these show the breaking out into quartiles. So the first quartile would mean that this is the number of times it was selected as between priority 1 to 4, and then this would be 5 to 8, 9 to 13, 15, 9 to 12, 13 to 16. So you could see the high number of rankings for more renewable energy, as well, which in the survey it was part of the conservation. These were both part of the conservation scenario. More renewable energy talked about moving transportation to switching cars to electric vehicles powered by renewable energy. Green infrastructure, as you may know, is about absorbing rainfall as much as possible where it falls, rather than it running off directly into lakes and rivers, which is a way to reduce the volume of water that, if in extreme rainfall events, that ends up having to be managed as flood protection. Both of these were probably influenced by the timing of the survey, which took place 3 weeks after these major flood events happened in around mid to late August. And for the green infrastructure strategy, explicitly talked about as a purpose for increasing resilience to flooding, because as part of the conservation scenario addressing climate change, talked about dealing with the problem of what we can expect is increased risk of extreme rainfall events and flooding. Second, survey findings, and I would say, you know, as Commissioner McKeever talked about, this is very consistent with leadership that the city of Monona is giving in terms of your green tier legacy and your sustainability plan, and doing a lot to promote renewable energy. I think I read you're part of joining a solar buying club or promoting a solar buying club. So you know, this is right along the lines of of the leadership that you're providing. So the next two levels of strategies that were ranked sort of 3 and 4 really were about more access to resources and access to opportunities. The more community-based resources was part of the community scenario, which was about community becoming more welcoming as the population grows and changes, so that people in the communities can access the needed resources, health care, education, community facilities, job training, things like that, more within their community, and to better meet their needs. And better connecting education and work was really about better pipelines to good jobs. You know, so if you move from education and job training, you can move into good paying jobs. So these are actually ranked number 1 and 2 by many groups: low income, communities of color, rural communities. So really in some ways, looking at finding number 1 and finding number 2, given what we know about these challenges that these represent, these are really sort of the overarching critical challenges that the region faces as a whole. And sort of almost defining challenges, given that we know that what the consequences of failure to act on both of these could be. And within those more overarching challenges, there's also vital challenges. In this case, the next ranked strategies were expanding transit and housing options, which are high priorities, they weren't necessarily as uniformly shared as those others. Those others showed strong support across pretty much almost all groups and areas. But you can see for expanded housing options, you're starting to see a little diversion, or in terms of how much of a priority that is. And that was, so the expanded housing options was ranked much a higher priority by communities of color, low-income communities, central urban areas, rural areas, and seniors. Less so among what we called the first ring communities. Monona was included as part of the central areas as we analyzed it. And then you look beyond that, Sun Prairie, Wanakee, McFarland, Verona was quite a bit lower priority. Expanding transit, really the highest support was more in the central area, and the farther out you got, the lower the support, the priority ranking was, which isn't too surprising that you have the greatest need in the central area. That's where the congestion is, and that's where the transit is more viable. It's not going to be as big of a demand in the village of Dane, for example. Moving on then, survey, the fourth major finding is that, preservation of rural farming areas was not an overall high priority. I think it ranked 9 or 10. It was a very high priority for people living in rural areas. And so this is a case where, again, it's important to look not just at the aggregate rankings and priorities, but also at what different groups feel is important. So in rural communities, preserving farming areas, and by areas it's more than land, it's areas, communities, is something that we should pay attention to. 5, is more about the actual growth options that people selected. The top choice was the conservation scenario growth option, which really was about redirecting growth away from environmentally important areas, environmental corridors that are being expanded in this scenario. And it's about growth. In this case, half of the new growth is happening as infill or redevelopment, as is recent trends in the last 10 to 15 years has been in the region, and otherwise growing outward in similar densities. But, and then if you look also at the votes for the community and the innovation, each though taken together, each one is very close to the conservation, and taken together, a strong support for some of the performance indicators of both of those: more compact, more transit-oriented growth. So the innovation had 70% infill redevelopment, expanded bus rapid transit, express bus, and commuter rail, sort of like that scenario. And so what we see is that there was essentially a support for a conservation-oriented type of growth. Conservation not only in terms of important land and environmental resources, but also the conservation of tax, infrastructure costs, household energy and transportation costs, greenhouse gas emissions. All the performance indicators performed better in the community and best pretty much in the innovation. The self-reliance was, as you can see, pretty much round, a distant fourth. And that's really another sort of finding, is that people really rejected this sort of, we're going to go it alone approach. And a lot of the comments that we heard were about the importance of finding more connections, not fewer. A lot of the comments, the largest category of comments, we read all the comments, we divided them up into categories based on what they said, and the largest number of comments were about expressing like a frustration that they had to choose one of the scenarios, or that they had to place priority over one strategy over others, when they really felt that you can't realistically approach these as separate, isolated problems, that they're really interrelated, integrated. So, one sample comment here is, all of these things are important. I would love a focused balance between innovation and conservation as the top two priorities. Innovation will help us faster and sooner. Conservation should help more long term. There needs to be a balanced approach with all four. Realistically, though, many of these things go well together and could have a multiplier effect. So that's another important finding. Finally, findings number 7 and number 8. So I mentioned the strong youth participation, and some of their results were a little different. They prioritized local energy production and locally grown food higher than other. Didn't put it top, but it was definitely higher than the survey respondents as a whole, who kind of put it in the middle, and younger people put it up, closer to the top. So they were really more focused on these sort of sustainability things a lot more. They did prioritize transit and more transit options and more housing options as high as the community as a whole. And maybe it's because it's not what they're thinking about as much. They have their transportation and the housing kind of taken care of, so that it's not on the top of their mind. And then, as I mentioned, with that low selection, low number of votes for the self-reliance scenario, people of all demographics and locations expressed the desire for more social connections. That came through clearly in the comments as well. Then you have on our website, we have this interactive map that you can click on different zip codes. You can click on the different demographics, and you'll be able to pop up and look at how each of the breakdown of the different demographics. So as you can see, 414 people from the zip code that includes Monona and as well as some other areas. It's a strong participation, heavily influenced by youth. As you can see, this age. This is the 15 to 19. So you can see that showed the Monona Grove High School students who took the survey, and you can also see that it does not include. You don't see, or you see expanded housing options. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 here, and you don't see transit up there. So this is the influence of, as I mentioned, of the student participants. But you can explore this. You could find out breakdowns within Monona by age and see how people of other ages selected. So we really want to get these, as I mentioned, get these results to work. We really encourage you to share this information, use the data in your local planning and decision making, advocate for policies that support the survey priorities, follow us on Greater Madison Vision on Facebook and Twitter. We're trying to use social media as much as possible to get the word out. And finally, in terms of next steps, the Greater Madison Vision will be working to try to pull together a vision statement, a vision of, after all this work, what does this tell us about what the vision for the Greater Madison region should be, especially as it relates to growth and development. CARPC will take the results and use it in a couple ways. One is we're going to update, as I mentioned, our regional land use plan in the next year or so, and that incorporating using these results as guidance. The commission has already been meeting monthly to start this process and apply these results in terms of what goals our land use plan should have. And as a water quality planning agency for the region, we're looking at initiatives to what a regional planning approach could be for increasing our flood resilience. As I mentioned, most through green infrastructure, absorbing more water where it falls. So in addition to strategies of increasing the flow through, for example, the Yahara Lakes chain of lakes, as the county and others are working on, it's also necessary to reduce the volume of water that you have to move through the system through things like restoring wetlands and rain gardens and green roofs or maybe even regional detention facilities. There's a lot of options that we want to look at. So that's the end of the presentation. I'd be happy to entertain questions. There's my contact information. Feel free to contact me afterwards as well. And I don't know if you wanted to say any other closing things.
I have nothing to add, thank you.
Okay.
Alderwood?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for coming tonight and the survey results, presenting them for us. I did have a question, actually goes a bit way back to the very beginning of your presentation, the overview slide that shows the only counties in the state that are unserved by regional planning commissions are the ones right around Madison.
Correct.
Which is kind of concerning. Can you tell me briefly like why that is and what?
Yeah, that really goes back to the original formation of our predecessor agency, the Dane County Regional Planning Commission, which was established in 1970. So there's a long history of regional planning in the state. And that's around that time when all the regional planning commissions pretty much got started. And the conversations, the attempts to form a multi-county RPC in our area just always broken down by cultural, differences, viewpoint differences between, Madison, Dane County, and surrounding counties.
Yeah.
the fear from the surrounding counties of being dominated by Dane County, issues of governance because, counties contribute tax levy, so governments versus representation. Surrounding counties might want, one county, one vote. In Dane County will say we're 80% of the regional tax base. We want 80% of the representation, and when you try to work that out and you get cultural differences, it's just never come together. And when CARPSI was established, there was a second attempt, or I don't know how many, but there was another attempt to try to form a multi-county RPC with the same results. There is now renewed interest in forming a multi-county RPC. The Madison Region Economic Partnership, MADREP, as many of you know, has recently completed its updated economic development strategy. They call it Advance Now 2.0. And one of the 8 key action items they identified was developing a multi-county RPC. It's not an easy thing to do.
Right.
If you were to do that, it would require starting over, going through the whole process of creating another RPC, and every community would have to pass resolutions, and the state would have to take action, and so it's a
Right.
significant undertaking. But there are other ways to achieve collaboration beyond multi-county. You can establish intergovernmental agreements or contractual arrangements. Other ways short of a multi-county RPC. Sorry, that's kind of a long answer to your
No, it's good, thanks.
question.
Any other questions? I was just curious, were you happy with the response?
I was, yeah. I mean, we had set a target of 10,000, and that was sort of a reach, a stretch goal, because we thought, well, let's choose something that will be difficult but possibly attainable. And we worked really hard at it. The steering committee members were active participants in getting their companies, Lion Energy, MG&E, sent the word out to their employees through other leadership. We were Epic Systems sent email out to all their employees, and that was a big boost. And we were on radio and newspapers and social media. So a lot of that is, by setting that goal, is to also just really spread the word. So even if people didn't take the survey, we just also really increasing awareness across the region of this, and even so more people were aware of it or knew someone who took it, and so I think that's important as we go forward with the results and the visions. That, having that level of awareness, if even beyond the participation, was important too.
Okay, well, thank you. It's very interesting, and
Thanks.
as you said, a lot of this, we're kind of working on a lot of these goals already, so
Yeah.
it's good to have this in hand. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Peter.
Yes?
Yes?
Yeah, I just was curious, sorry. I
I'm
just
sorry.
had one more question. I was over here. And that is, in terms of the age, race, page 29, income and geography, I'm a little unclear as to, or wondering if you know how that equates to the actual population that was surveyed. In other words, especially in terms of income or race, if you know.
So race was fairly representative. I mentioned the white, was 83% survey respondents white compared to 80% of Dane County population.
Okay.
African Americans, it was like 4.7% survey responses to 5% population. Not a little less representative for Latinx and Asian. Age was fairly, youth were overrepresented and seniors were a little
I remember saying that,
underrepresented. Where we did not do as well was in terms of was in income, income and, what's the other one? But, so, people with higher incomes were pretty significantly overrepresented. Lower incomes, so people with incomes above 75,000 were about 50% more represented in the survey than in actuality.
Okay. Your last comment about Epic sending out to their employees and a few others like that, I would assume.
That probably
would-
contributed to that,
would,
yeah.
You know, certainly if you're going after that population. So thank you for
But
clarifying.
I would note, though, we did also look at weighting the results. So we weighted the results by race and by, it was income and education, higher education was also overrepresented. So each of those groups, and the aggregate results actually didn't change very much at all. You know, some of the priority rankings shifted up and down, you know, 1 or 2 slots, but it didn't change it dramatically at all. When you look at the breakdown by groups, you do see some important differences that I've tried to highlight in my, because the differences are important to look at too.
Great. And one more quick question, which is, was there anything in it that surprised you?
I guess I was a little surprised at how high the renewable energy and green infrastructure ranked. I mean, I knew that obviously the flooding was going on, but given that historically you haven't seen climate change in political campaigns or surveys as ranking up near the top of people's concerns, but I think that this survey is capturing that there is a shift happening in that, especially with younger people, and just in general, as you see, as people are experiencing the impacts of climate change, and you're seeing increasingly dire reports coming from the UN panel on climate change, and even from, not too long ago, from the federal government. Although I guess they're working to try to make sure that doesn't happen again. But.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Let's move on to the consent agenda, which is very, very long, as it usually is this time of year. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. There is no unfinished business. Under new business, item 2A, which is started for immediate approval, consideration of application for 2019-2020 upper patio permit for Berkey's LLC, doing business as Buck and Honey's, 800 West Broadway, Suite 300, put forth by the License Review Committee. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
Move to take this item out of order.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Is there a motion to approve this?
Move to approve.
Is there a
Second.
second? Yes, okay. Mr. Tom Anderson is here to answer any questions. Doug, were you going to talk about this, or?
Sure, I can. So I think you might want to go on up there to Tom, to the,
Just up to the
yeah.
podium.
So I think there were some unanswered sort of questions at the license review as to whether you were going to ask for any variances from the ordinances.
Yep,
Or
I think the main one was the lower level patio. And Hamburg, we've been working with them, and I don't know, through my architect in Hamburg, so we've been pretty much having to coordinate our patio and the sidewalk with the city, and it sounds like everything's been worked out great. We've actually added to make it fully ADA, we've added a new ramp this week that, so it's very accessible for anybody throughout the whole park, and then the boardwalk. So we did that this week. There was 2 entrances in the lower level patio that were our main concern was having them gated, and it's probably obvious. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why, but the welcoming factor of having a closed gate, and it just, everywhere, like it's in Sun Prairie, for instance, we had, I think this may be a very similar ordinance, and it didn't make any sense because it would block the welcoming factor, and we have a sign, and how I even drew it up with my sign company this week, and what it would say is, it's just an area. There was actually 4 open areas, so we gated 2 of them to close this off as much as we could, so there aren't ways to sneak in and sneak out. But the 2 obvious areas that would be open would be from the park, there'd be one, and then the one from the boat ramp and the landings there from the boardwalk. And it's just it's a normal area, but it would be a sign. On one side it would say, "Welcome to Buck and Honey's," and on the other side it would say, it'd have our logo very well lit. You could see it right as you're walking out, and it would say, "Absolutely no open containers beyond this point, strictly enforced." And then I also, with the next step, because I know how important this is to the city, is monitoring, and to the detective that I talked to. So we're like 30 cameras that we have throughout this whole area. Yeah, 24 to 30. And the original monitor for it was in our office, the manager's office downstairs. So a big monitor, you can keep an eye on things. I added a monitor in our kitchen, so all the managers anywhere, we could see what's going on the cameras at all times. And strictly enforced, again, I will be strictly enforcing these, this little open area, and it makes sense, I think, even for it just won't look right. And then ADA accessibility too, you'd have to figure out how to open these gates. And I've looked at other areas, I think for what ours is, the uniqueness of the park and the boardwalk and the boat, it really would not look right or feel right. And I don't know, I'm hoping common sense makes some sense with the, any variance with the ordinance on it.
How wide would each of the 2 openings?
I think the one is pretty standard at 4 feet, and the other one is 8 feet 4. So you can, it's a kind of a busy traffic area. So that'd be a huge gate to open up. I think like the Silver Eagle, I drove by there the other day. They have an open, their gated patio. There's an open. It's not gated. It's just an opening, and I kind of foresee it like that, and I didn't even notice a sign there that has anything. So clearly I think it makes sense when you look at the whole, the drawing of it, but I'm happy to answer any questions on it or what your thoughts are.
And then one other question, the ordinance requires the 9 p.m. Closing for the patios. Were you going to ask for variance on that, or are you okay?
Yeah, for dining, obviously if people are dining and it's a beautiful night out, that's, I think, the design of the park. I put this 30-foot fire chase that overlooks the water in the park, and I certainly, on a beautiful night, I would hope people could still dine out there. I know there won't be any live music beyond that or anything like that. But for dining, I would hope that we could have a variance to exceed dining to whatever hours are acceptable.
So we have 2 different
Yeah, thanks for,
items here. Does that apply, this variance, to both the upper and the lower? Right now, I think what's under discussion is the upper one.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, again, I would like to see dining at both of them if it's, again, we're kind of a moving target here on what to expect out there. I would anticipate any later dining would be on the upper level through the main restaurant. Most boaters are often, doing their thing later on. So, maybe it could be 9 o'clock, a lower level, and if we could exceed it till, a little bit later on the upper level, or, I don't want to see it where, because again, I don't know how it's all going to flow, and if that traffic area, people are hanging out in the park, and it's a nice night out, and, want to have dinner, and it's, I hate to lock us into something if maybe just an hour, to buy an hour.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
that's my question, is what time you
Yeah.
say later? And, and what are we allowing other people to be open? What's,
right.
what are we have 2 other outdoor eating patios.
Right, for instance, how late is Breakwater?
Breakwater.
Joan may have.
Joan, do you know?
Oh, but that's what I gave to you, Alderwood.
Right, so Breakwater, they also have an upper and lower patio. It's 9 p.m. The patio service shall cease at 9, patio closure at 10.
Is that for both patios?
Yeah,
Is that for weekend and weekday?
right, yeah. However, I was trying to find, in the packet, we have the applications. I know that Waypoint has later, considerably later hours. Joan, do you know what they are?
I'm sorry. I'm
What-
sorry. What was the question?
Waypoint, what they're,
Waypoint is, I believe, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe they're open until 2 a.m. Again, they're not facing any residences, so it's a different location to deal with, but they are open pretty much their regular bar hours.
And last week, we just approved the tasting room for 10 PM Saturday, or Sunday through Thursday, and then 12 AM Friday through Saturday.
mhm.
So, I mean, I think we should at least be consistent with our
That's,
neighbors.
yeah, that's one of the, if I can interject.
Sure.
Mayor, that's one of the problems is that tasting room faces a road. Buck and Honey's faces across the water are residences, so it needs to be considered, and that's why Breakwater is earlier than Waypoint. It's the residences that we're concerned with.
We are already inconsistent, wildly inconsistent. I think between Breakwater and the tasting room, and now we got a third one.
Again, it's the location, what the effect that their sound will have to the area.
Does Tasting Room's patio go alongside the river, or is that strictly overlooking the patio, or the parking lot?
As far as I see, it faces Broadway.
Right.
It faces
It's a
Broadway,
corner,
but
yeah.
the river
Does the-
goes right
does-
next to them,
But does
so,
it go, does the sound go across the water?
yes.
They're gonna, they've talked about it last council, that they're gonna be having fans going, they're gonna have light, quieter music. They did address that at the council. It's probably in the minutes, I bet, that you have in your packet.
I mean, I agree, the breakwater was limited, I think, because they are, I mean, literally just across the river, like, and, which is not very wide, there's residences. Yeah, or,
Buck
Yeah.
and Honey's is across the river too, isn't it?
yeah, there's-
Did Breakwater, sorry to interject, did they request a later variance, or did they just settle for whatever?
No, no,
what was
it's what we,
Yeah, yeah.
They
Yeah, I
did,
don't,
they did. There was debate at license review.
There's a history of complaints with that location.
that's
Sure.
true, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Which, obviously, there's no history here.
Yeah,
so-
yeah, no, I understand. And to go, to my comments before, we are not, I mean, a late night place, so I mean, I really, I think that, we're gonna be keeping it down for our neighbors. We wanna make good with our neighbors as well. So, I mean, just to have a little bit of leeway as to figuring out, what those are, but
Right,
you guys, if you tell me what it is what it is, but I hope we, even, I'm kind of comparing some Prairie, we don't dine late. 10
Yeah.
o'clock is our kitchen's closed at 10, even on a Saturday, Friday and Saturday. And, yes, ma'am.
Oh, sorry, I have a question when you're done.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so that's, I mean, I'm not too concerned with it, to be honest, because it's not, I don't want to be open and, people having a great time out there. But if if it's a beautiful night out and they want to take their drink out and sit by the fire and have a conversation, that's kind of what we're doing. We're hospitality, and we want to, I know it's going to be hard to say, sorry, you can't go outside because of this.
Right.
Just so you're clear, the ordinance requires table service. So
Yes.
It would not be a situation where people could be served inside.
Right.
And they can walk outside with their drink.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are your hours going to be?
So our Monday through Saturday, it's 11 a.m. to close is how we state it. If it's slow on a Tuesday or a Monday and we want to close the kitchen at 8:30 or 9, it'll be open till 9 at least.
Okay.
But the kitchen usually will stay open till 10:30 at the latest, on any given day. And then it just kind of fizzles. We don't, we don't really I mean, if there's 3 people in there and it's 11 o'clock, we say last call. You know, if there's 10 people and it's 11:15, we might, you know, but midnight, generally, you won't see Bucket Honey's open past midnight. You know, I get the concern, and you gotta follow, you know, there's other people to think about here, so.
Alder Groupie? Then Alder Moore?
The patio permits are reviewed annually, is that
Mhm.
correct? So I guess a question would be if we want to cast a wide net and go a little bit more liberal for the first year, since there is not an existing history, and see how things go and whether or not there are complaints, or if we want to be consistent with what the breakwater currently does, since we're saying they're similarly situated. I guess I would ask the council to ask themselves that question, open it up for a discussion on that front.
Alder Moore?
Well, I guess there's 2 or 3 things that come to mind for me. One is to Alder Groupie's point. Obviously, the entire development represents a shift for Monona. It's very different than anything we've ever done. And I would be concerned, as much as I appreciate that we could reel it back after a year, I don't think what we want to do is offend people right out of the gate. This is a new development that we want to be putting a positive, very much of a positive vibe, if you will, with the whole community. And so, you know, I would hate to immediately get into kind of a rub with the people that live across the river, among other things, or with Breakwater, who's had their time limited. So I'd be a little bit nervous about that. And the last thing I would say is, for somebody who has spent her entire life living on the water, when it's evening, sound carries. When it's quiet, sound carries a lot across the water. I can hear what's going, I can literally hear everything that's going on across the lake, over by the locks at night at my house. I can hear every single concert that's ever been done in the neighborhood that's across the lake at night. I listened to the entire Bratfest. I could hear every single word of every single band, not just figure out what the tune was, but literally could hear their lyrics. So I'm just saying, going across the water, just be aware that it does carry a lot more. And then I guess the other thing that I would say is that the degree to which we're being asked to ignore the gate or extend the gate policy that we have is concerning for me. I understand that, you know, I certainly understand and appreciate wanting to be welcome. But at the same time, I think the reason why we expect table service and the reason why we have that policy is to be attentive overall to who's coming and going. So that's all I'm going to say right now. Yeah.
Mayor,
Bill?
on the point of the fencing,
Yeah.
I did take a look at the ordinance, and it is different for patio gardens than patio permits. It's more lenient for patio permits, which is what the applicant wants here. It only required, it doesn't require any fencing. It says the council may require the patio to be enclosed partially or completely by a fence or wall. So it doesn't require any fencing, nor does it require, if you do impose any fencing, any specific height. So as the applicant has submitted in their application, that would be compliant. This council would have the ability to impose stricter requirements or require gates if you wanted to, but you're not required to. What he's applied for as far as fencing is consistent with the ordinance.
Alder Thomas?
Why is it different? Because I agree with you. If you're going to put a gate up, I don't consider a fence unwelcoming. I mean, it's just a view. I like it. I mean, I like gates. I
Yeah.
think they're attractive and they're a way for you to go in. So I don't know, but my question to you, Attorney Cole, is why is it, you said it's different. Why is it different?
Well, when it was drafted and passed, the beer gardens were more intended as sort of places for drinking of alcohol, where the patio permits were more intended for table service, people are eating food, and alcohol is associated with that, as opposed to sort of the traditional,
Pitcher of beer and 5 glasses and.
Right. So alcohol is more of an accessory thing, so the ordinance was much more lenient as far as fencing.
Will there be alcohol served on the patio? Or do they get it is it delivered to them from inside?
Both.
Okay, so there is alcohol served on, so there will always be staff present?
Always be staff present.
Yeah, so that your ordinance requires alcohol may be sold only to and consumed by patrons seated at tables. So this would be the type of situation where somebody is seated at the table, they place their order for their food and their alcohol, and the wait staff would go and fill the alcohol at the bar and bring it to the person seated at the table.
It sounds like there's a couple different issues here, and right now we're only focusing on the upper patio.
Okay.
Correct.
Maybe, yeah.
There's no
maybe-
gates. There's no gates.
So there's
on the
no gate
upper
there. Do you have any kind of music outside you anticipate?
Yeah, so we do live music 5 days a week now in Sun Prairie, and weather permitting, we do it outside. And we have neighbors all over us, retirement communities, everything. And in 9 years, we had one complaint. It was very low. The city of Sun Prairie's got a decibel meter, and we are, say you can't go above 3. We were like at under 1. So it's light background music. People can still have a conversation. We're not doing concerts. It's singer-songwriter type guy, a couple jazz pieces here and there. But it is very lovely outside when you're sitting there and enjoying the boats going by. And we would certainly abide by the ordinance for that. I think the music ordinance was to 9 o'clock. We would never exceed that for that.
And where would that person be, upstairs?
That would be
or-
upstairs.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
And the only time I could maybe see would be Saturday and Sundays during the day, as boats are flying by, and maybe I've got a guy sitting out there playing a guitar downstairs. That's Sunday brunch. We're gonna do a great brunch, and having them outside might be kind of nice. If the city parks, there's live, it's just lively. I think that's the intent of it. So I think that the music will not, any type of music will just add to the atmosphere, not deter it.
Okay.
So I'm still not clear what time you're requesting for the upstairs patio, how late you want to stay open.
Well, I would say, 10, if it's 10 o'clock during the week and midnight and the weekends, if that's what breakwater is, then it makes it real easy for us not to,
Well, the breakwater is,
10 and midnight is what he said.
It's 10.
that's what theirs, 10 and midnight on weekends?
No, that
No.
was
That's
tasting
That's
room.
tasting room.
It's 10
Or
o'clock.
tasting
I think
rooms.
their kitchen or service is done at 9, and
They don't
then
have a
they're
kitchen.
out at 10.
Right.
Is what Doug said.
Yeah.
Has there been any issues in the past with them
There have been a number of
breaking their ordinance, or?
different issues with them, partly, and with the previous occupant with noise complaints
Yeah.
from across
Yeah.
the river. I don't know that and they've had quite a few audio,
They've come to the
sound
plan
permits.
commission.
Hmm?
They've come to the neighbors have come to the plan commission. complaining
Since
about
in the
noise.
last year.
I don't think, they haven't been before the plan commission in the last year.
Oh. Yeah, we haven't heard of any complaints about their music, and they do get a number of, amplified music permits. They did in the last summer, maybe a dozen, Joan, would you say, or more
They've
possibly?
turned in, I think about over 30 for this year.
Yeah.
They're
Well,
gonna, they're
but
gonna
they,
expand.
that ends at 9, so,
So their service ends at 10.
no, the service ends at 9.
Okay.
The patio is closed at 10,
Okay.
meaning people who've been served before the 9 o'clock closure have to vacate by 10.
At 10, okay. Okay. So where are we here? Andrew?
Sorry, not to belabor the gate point, but I noticed in the drawing that we have here, it's connected to kind of that cement walkway on that first level. Is there gonna be a brick wall that separates you from the cement walkway that you could potentially walk all the way to the tasting room, or is there gonna be a gate there?
On the
that-
first level?
Yeah, or well, on the level we're talking about, the upper patio.
Yeah, upper patio.
Yeah,
No, that's always been slated, just as it's been drawn. I
Okay.
believe that boardwalk, you could walk straight through.
Wait, what now?
That was on the original plans from, from my.
yeah, I didn't know.
But good question. And you know what, to be honest, there might be. I don't know. It might be a building thing that I'm not privy to, that I don't know, so.
Gotcha.
But that, I don't think that walkway will be used very often. It's mostly emergency type doors that even people go out there.
Well, so I guess I'm just wondering how
Yeah.
would we approach this? We have this split into two different resolutions,
So
but some of these things obviously overlap.
I guess I would suggest let's all focus on the upper
Yeah.
patio for now and then deal with the lower. But now I thought the upper was fairly straightforward, but that last exchange confused me a little bit. So what was your question again, Alder Kitzler?
Oh, again, not to belabor the point, but that walkway along the river that you see on the left side of the illustration here,
Right.
it goes all the way to the end of the development building, to the
Right.
tasting room, and you could potentially walk down the stairs and hit the river. So I was just asking, is there a gate or some sort of blockade there that would allow somebody to walk that way?
But they wouldn't, there wouldn't be direct egress out to that walkway from the upper patio, would there?
Yeah, I think it's all the same level right there.
But there'll be a fence around the upper patio.
Yep, there's a fence though all the way.
Yeah.
But
Would
not
there be
the-
a gate?
not
'Cause
the
it
walkway.
looks like there's a
Yeah,
gate.
I don't know what's going on past there, to be honest with you. That's the
No, I mean,
building.
on your patio. it
The
looks
building
like
owns
there's a
that
gate,
past our space
right?
and,
Isn't that what that is? Or am I-
There's a door to the interior.
Oh, okay. Oh, got it. So,
It's not a huge hindrance on my feelings about this, so
Yeah.
it was just a question.
So what do we need to decide about the upper?
The time.
The time, is
the
that
time
primarily it?
and the extent of the fencing.
For the sake of moving this along, I'll move to provide a variance. Does it have to be a part of the motion, or make an amendment, or a new motion?
Got to be a variance if you're changing the time.
Well, we have a motion on the floor, I think
Yeah.
is what he's asking, so yeah, it would have.
So amendment to add a variance, at least for the timing wise, to mirror breakwater, which service is done at 9 PM, and then the patio is vacated at 10 PM.
what, can I still speak?
Let's see if there.
We'll see if
Yes,
there's a
there-
second.
is
so
there a
it could
second?
die right away.
I'll second that.
Could I request to mirror, the, tasting room, which is in the same building and they are on the water, which is, their hours are 10 AM, I think, and then midnight on the weekends just for the future of
But
that.
do you close the kitchen at 10?
Yep, we won't serve food, I think 10 AM and then,
PM.
and then we close the kitchen at 10 during the week at the very latest, and then maybe 10:30 again on the weekends, depending on what the volume looks like. So to have people, if we feed someone at 10, they might be out there till 11, eating dinner. if it's a beautiful night. And again, I think that if our same tenant in our same building who is on the water has that, it seems like
But
it
he
might
doesn't
make
face
sense.
the houses, that's the.
Well, his patio,
His side
and
does,
that's
doesn't
pretty.
The side does in the same way that his
There's
does.
homes right across
No,
from
it's
his
not
patio there.
quite the same.
The front of where he is faces the parking lot, but one end of it does face the water.
The same issues with noise of people maybe visiting would, if anything, it might be later there as they're, they're just drinking basically there.
That's true. Well, we have this motion that's been seconded, and
It's the amendment to the motion.
amendment to the motion, right? Aldermore,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, I guess I feel like it's exactly the same issue. Front and back of the building. I mean, the tasting room has one side facing the river and directly across the river. Okay, maybe the river's 10 feet wider at that point, but it's still residential. And so if we've already approved the extension for the tasting room, and I have bigger concerns about that, frankly, but since we've already approved that, I feel like it needs to be more consistent with that than with the breakwater.
Alder Coor,
What time does the park close?
10.
The what?
Okay.
Oh,
So
park.
potentially we'd have people in the park till 10 making noise,
True.
and we're not going to change that.
Alder Thomas?
What's going through my mind right now is providing an advantage one business over the other in terms of keeping them open. It provides, and I don't disagree. If you want to go have a drink, then you might, and you just got off work at 9 o'clock or something, you might choose to go to the tasting room as opposed to Buck and Honey's. On the other hand, if you want dinner, you might go to Buck and Honey's and not go to Breakwater. And that is a clear disadvantage economically for Breakwater. And consistency, I mean, unless there's a rationale for being inconsistent, I think we need to be consistent. Now, I don't know what we do with Breakwater, but it doesn't seem fair to them to give, and I guess I wish the tasting would come after you, because I might not have said 54 people, and I might not say till midnight, but we did. So, having said that, I think we need to be as consistent as possible with everybody who is serving alcohol or beer, because they're all on the water, and they're all down there. And I don't know how you magically do that, but that's, I think, fair.
Alder Coor, then Alder Wood.
I just have trouble setting a precedent based on Breakwater because there's nothing to say that Breakwater can't come in here next week and ask for a variance to their permit. If we approve 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock for a tasting room in Buck and Honey's, they can walk in here and ask for the variance. And I also would say that we should not penalize businesses that have not established yet based on bad actors that have had issues.
I
So-
agree, and I'm not suggesting that we not do it. I'm suggesting that we need to be prepared to actually maybe even to let Breakwater know that we're doing this, because, I think they feel disadvantaged because of all the construction. And maybe we say, this is what we did, and if you want to come in for a permit, you come in for a permit. Otherwise, they will think that we went around,
Alder Wood.
So I guess I'll confess I was confused apparently about the tasting rooms application. and I thought they represented that the patio did not face the water.
It's on the eastern side. The eastern edge of the patio, just like the eastern edge of Tom's patio, is on the river.
Well, then, shame on me for not making sure I understood it before I voted on it.
Yeah, I don't think they intentionally misled the council. I think they
Yeah.
just stated that the main focus of the patio would be facing Broadway Avenue.
But it's not like there's some barrier at the east
Right,
end that's
yeah.
gonna keep sound from going.
Right.
Yeah. Anyone else? Could we do one time restriction on the upper level, especially since we have this thing about the park closing at 10, and close the lower level
So
earlier?
could I add to the, so even, I mean, I seconded this motion mainly just to get it moving, get it moving forward here. I would prefer to see us limit the patio service to end at 10, but then the patio close at 11.
We have, I mean, if Andy's okay with that, then that's a friendly amendment. If Andy's not, then, you know, he's got a motion pending, he's entitled
Yeah.
to a vote on it.
Right.
You're talking about the upper patio?
Yeah, we're still on the
Okay.
upper
Yeah,
patio.
Thank you.
Please, we gotta stick to one for minutes. Come on.
So, I mean, I think I go back to Alder Thomas's and Alder Kerr's comments of just having consistency with the businesses there. So, I mean, I again made this motion just to kind of get things going. So, I mean, one, whatever we decide, if we're adding hours, we need to tell Breakwater that this is what we're doing. You have the opportunity to come before us. But I still see, now that we've kind of made the argument between tasting room and Buck and Honey, it's like, I think they should be the same. So why would we, so I guess I'm not accepting it as a friendly if we're not being the same to the tasting room as we are to them. Buck and Honey's being them. I think I'm separating Breakwater because they can come back and ask us for a variance, but at the same time, I would hate to have three businesses along the river having three different closing times, and people could just kind of hop from one to the next, and I think, again, it would disadvantage
Well,
one business over the other.
Your motion is to grant them a patio permit under hours mirroring
Breakwater,
Breakwater's.
yep, correct.
Okay.
I just did that to get the things moving and get the discussion going.
Under hours,
Not saying I'd vote for my own amendment.
okay. So
Oh,
can I
Thomas.
move to amend his motion to make the hours consistent with the tasting room?
No,
Or would
I
you
mean,
rather he withdraw?
Should he just withdraw his
Procedurally,
amendment?
yeah,
Should we
he
just
can-
shoot mine down?
Shoot,
he
shoot
can
yours
withdraw
down
it, or it
first.
should be voted.
Faster way would be to have
Right.
withdraw.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
let's
mean,
just vote for it.
Wow.
You could
Withdraw
amend
it.
it, right? Couldn't you just amend it to what he really wants?
How about we just vote on it and then we don't debate whether, what the various.
Call a question.
You can't amend a motion to amend. You either
Why not?
withdraw your motion to amend, or you vote on it, and if it
Alright.
fails, then anybody else can bring another motion.
But I could accept hers as a friendly, can I?
Sure. Yep.
We're in danger of creating enough bratwurst to last the rest of the summer.
I'll accept Alder Thomas's as a friendly amendment to my amendment.
And
But
yours
then
is,
we're amending an amendment. You
Okay,
just say
we'll
you
just
can't
vote
do
on
that?
mine.
Withdraw it.
He's not amending, it's a friendly amendment.
Could I withdraw?
Yeah,
Just withdraw.
yes.
I'm withdrawing.
thank you.
Oh, my.
Now we have
Got the
Dr.,
discussion
we have Alder Woods, well, but you didn't have a second for yours, did you?
I didn't make a motion.
Or you didn't
I was
actually
just
make
He
a
saying-
motion.
did, but he didn't get a
You wanted
second.
to change, okay.
No, I was just saying what I would support, but anyway, go ahead.
Alder Thomas, did
Take
you
your
have
crack
something?
at
I
it.
move to grant a variance to make the hours of Buck and Honey's consistent with the tasting room.
On the upper level?
Yes,
Because that's what
that's,
we're talking about.
So those would be,
They're in
they're
the
different
minutes.
during the week than they are in the,
So it'd be 10 PM Sunday.
During the week.
10 weekdays and midnight weekends, and
So-
holidays,
And
right?
holidays. And then we can debate what
Is there a
holidays.
second to that?
Do you want the same, are they gonna want the same holiday later hours?
I
They have
would just
like
make it
July
consistent.
3rd.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
So,
yes, please.
I'll
Alderman
second
Moore.
if you need a second,
You'll second, okay,
and then I have a
okay,
question.
okay.
So, the way in which Buck and Honey's is obviously, there's lots of ways in which you're distinct from the tasting room, but one of the ways in which you're distinct from the tasting room is that you have a kitchen, they don't.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I just want to get clarity from this body as to whether, when we say the hours are and the closing is, are we talking about the establishment closing? Like the park closes at 10, we're saying the establishment closes at 10, or the
No.
kitchen closes at 10?
No,
You
the
said
patio,
patio.
patio service.
Okay, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to get clear whether it's the patio, the kitchen, because Tom has talked about the kitchen as distinct from other portions of the business, so I just want to get clear.
So they
We're
can still
saying
be serving inside.
They can still be serving inside, and it's the patio is closed. Does that mean the patio is cleared at 10 o'clock?
That's the way your ordinance is drafted with that thought.
With that thought in mind, okay.
Once the closing time hits, no matter what time it is, then not just the alcohol service will stop, but the area will be vacated.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Well,
Alder Thomas.
Just a comment to think about, and I don't have the answer, but when we did the festival, we could never, we would stop the service, and then they had time after that to finish their drink, because nothing annoys a patron more than buying a drink and then being told, buying a drink at 3 minutes to 10 and being told at 10 o'clock you have to clear the place out.
Right, this would be effectively just like their inside, where they will have a mandatory closing time, and then it's up to their discretion as to decide when to stop service prior to that.
But the mandatory closing of the patio will be 10 during the week. Anyone else? So all in favor of approving Alder Thomas's motion?
Yeah, I can
Doug?
do it. So, but midnight on weekends and the night before holiday, or, night preceding holidays, isn't that later than you've said that you would even more likely be open?
Yeah, again, this is a moving target, just to have the
Yeah.
option. I don't want to lock myself in if we've got, if it's one of those nights where, something's going on or somebody's celebrating their retirement and we like to take care of our guests. Hospitality is
Right.
the number one thing. So we're not one to kick people out. So just having the flexibility, but again, you'll see and how we run things, how we do it now, we're just, we get out of here. People just have that trend to move on to something else. We're that casual, family casual to fine dining, and it's just not one of those places. You have your fun between 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. or maybe 11 at the latest, and we're just that type of place. But having the flexibility, I think this is the time we do it up front, and not come back to you later.
Anyone else? Alder Moore.
I just wanted to express that, as you know, Tom, one of the things that we talked about from the very beginning as it relates to entertainment, as it relates to music, was not, in fact, getting in conflict with what's going on in the park.
Right.
We talked a lot in the ad hoc meeting about the, weddings not being able to spill out into the park because it's a public park, and not being able to use the park as a reception area.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that you remember that we want you to be communicating with Jake in the park.
You got
and
it.
his schedule, so that your entertainment doesn't conflict with ours, because then we could definitely get complaints from
Yeah.
neighbors.
True.
No, yes,
Yeah,
that's not a
yeah.
concern.
Yeah.
It's a public space. I think
Yeah.
people, they might get done with their lunch or dinner and go and hang out in the park. I think that's kind of the idea, the whole concept. But it's not parties spilling out and utilizing the park as our space.
Yeah.
But I think they'll work really well together. And
Yeah.
I know it's not my park to rent out for an event. Very clear on that.
Anybody else? Okay, all in favor of approving Alder Thomas's motion,
It's
her amendment to the original motion, increasing the hours to the, so they're the same as the tasting room, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion passes. Now we're back to the original motion. Is there anything else we have to be concerned about besides when the patio closes regarding the upper patio? Doug, is there, or,
There's a 40 patron limit.
okay. Doug, did you have anything?
Yeah, just that
Well,
there,
maybe that, but I mean, I don't know what.
well, while you're thinking about that, whether that's a problem, as I understand the drawing, that there's no barrier from somebody walking out of the patio down that walkway, which if we want to do that, it's fine, but that's definitely different than most of all the patios that I can think of.
I think it was required by the building, fire access maybe. I don't think it's not designed on purpose. It's not it's not a patio for seating or, but I think it might be an emergency exit or something.
Okay.
That's why that was built that way. I know it is for our kitchen. That's where our kitchen emergency exit is and
Okay.
goes out on that
That
boardwalk.
makes some sense.
The ordinance requires that if you're looking for a patio permit, it's going to be issued for areas with seating no greater than 40 persons. At least by your diagram, I count 11 tables at 4 seats. So that would be seating for 44 persons. So I don't know if this is just,
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not far off, and I don't know what that details for if a variance is needed, if we have more than 40, if we have 50. I mean,
You would.
certainly.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is if it's approved without a variance, you can have 40 seats out there.
Okay,
10 tables at 4 each, or however you want to
Yeah.
arrange it, but you'd be limited to 40 seats.
certainly. So I would request, I guess that's news to me, I think, so I would request a variance on that, if we could.
To what?
To 60. Looking at this with,
And we approved
54.
54 for tasting room.
Yeah, we did increase tasting room to 54.
Jennifer? I would move to approve the variance as requested to increase the seating available on the patio to 60.
60.
One second.
Any discussion about that? Alder Kitzler?
Just generally in support of the amendment or the variance is, at least by the looks of the pictures, if it's drawn to scale, representative, the tasting room is, your patio is quite a bit bigger, it seems, than the tasting rooms.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Anyone else have any comments on the amendment to increase the amount of seating to 60? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we're back to the original resolution again, or original motion again. So is there anything else that we need to consider about this?
Wasn't it were we still in discussion about entrances and exits? Gating?
Well, I
That's
think
the upper level.
we're just
Lower
focusing on the
level is
upper
gating.
level.
Lower level is.
The gating is lower level. That's the next resolution.
Sorry, I thought we
No, we're only half done.
Right. Got it.
Unless somebody wanted to require a gate, to preclude walking down that long hallway. I mean, 'cause if you grant the motion as it is, they don't need to have any gating. So the person could walk along there.
I mean, I would be hesitant for us to impose that condition before we've had a chance to check with fire department about that.
Yeah.
And if I could just add with the gating, the bylaws on this, it says they may require it. It's
Right.
not saying it's required
Sure.
anywhere, correct?
Right.
Just to confirm that.
Anyone else? Okay, hearing nothing else, then I guess we'll call the question on the original motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. You have your upper patio.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Halfway there.
Thank you all, yes.
All right, next item, also started for immediate action. Item 2B, consideration of application for 2019-2020 lower patio permit for Berkey's LLC, doing business as Buck and Honey's, 800 West Broadway, Suite 300, also put forth by the License Review Committee. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
Move to suspend the rules and take this item out of order.
Second.
All in favor? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. Doug?
Well, I
Wanna
think
address
we've
this?
sort of already talked about the lower patio. I think well, again, I probably wouldn't need to address the hours, which we didn't really talk about. And whether we're okay with having two open entryways or not. I wouldn't be, so I guess I'm not concerned certainly about having one. It concerns me a little bit to have two of them, just because, I don't know, I think it'll be more difficult. The more openings there are, the more difficult it will be for staff to sort of monitor who's coming and going, and that's, on the river and park level, so.
Andrew?
When somebody walks in those gates, either from the boat or say I'm in the park and then I want to go to Buck and Honey's and I come in at this level, is there a host there that's, kind of waiting for me to be seated and check in? Or where would I go as a patron? And maybe that would, if there's a host there that can visibly see kind of both
Yeah.
exits and entrances. that
Yeah,
would
I mean,
be-
this just general area, it all depends on the, how busy things are and staffing needs. I mean, there might be times during the week, we have a sign at both entrances saying, enter through the upstairs for dining. This whole patio closed. This might be closed down here, and we're sending people upstairs when the main restaurant's open.
Might
Other
you
times.
serve alcohol down there and not food?
What's that?
Might you serve alcohol down there and not food?
No. I mean, if somebody just wants to sit and just have a drink and not eat, I mean, that happens in any restaurant. You can go to
Okay,
Red Rock.
but if you have a lot of boaters, they may not be interested in eating, they may just want to stop for a drink. So if you didn't have enough capacity to need to serve food down there, could you just turn that into a bar area?
I think food's gonna be a big part of it. I think that's generally, what we are, is we're 75% restaurant, 25% alcohol. So, we'd wanna serve food down there.
Alder
Presumably that anyone who is a patron in this area would be seated. It's not like you've got an area where people can grab a drink and lean on the bar. So if you were walking in,
Right.
you would be expected to be seated.
The only seats that you'll see, so I built these nano windows, and there was some pretty great expense in the design of this, because these four, if you look at the bar, there's these nano windows here. We will have outdoor seating at a bar where people can eat right there, and they can look, these nano doors and nano windows open up. It's gonna be very open and airy. And so it's a really neat design concept, sitting on the water, watching the boats go by, eating. So you do have some bar seats, you could sit at an outdoor bar stool.
But you'd be
And
seated.
you look inside, and there could be a TV, you could watch the game. So, yes. You can see, I mean, the bartender can, anybody if this is open, there will be full access to see what's going on outside for any staff member to see what's going on.
And where would the people who are sitting at the bar stool, or,
Yep.
where would they be served from?
Right from the bar. I mean, so it's an in and out bar. The bar is multi-used, if you can see it. Maybe it's easy to explain it
Yeah.
to the doc here. So these outdoor bar stools here, and then this is
Right.
the indoor bar that services the event space. and
Okay.
full dining.
Yeah.
So this person here can be there.
Yeah, you have a little different drawing than what I have.
Oh, is it?
That makes it clearer.
Here, I printed 8 copies of this, and I brought it. Somebody said that you guys had it on your screen, so.
So does that mean it's really good?
Yeah, they're still sitting outside.
But I'd argue it's not like a beer garden, because it's a restaurant, you're gonna walk in and sit down and order something, as opposed to, you know,
The second page.
thanks.
It's a little bit more detailed.
So I think the bar.
And there's some,
That
there's some who just.
So, sorry to go
Well, and
back to
and
my
I think that's
question. I
probably
think you
true,
answered it.
but
So if I were coming
my-
off a boat,
My distinction
And then
between essentially a beer garden,
came into the
like at
patio.
a festival,
Sorry, I
is
think
that
we
people
just
are
gotta go
coming
there
and going,
so they can
grabbing a
hear
drink,
Yeah.
maybe leave and
Can
come
we
back. This is,
bring this
you're
up on
gonna,
the
you're gonna show up,
screen somehow?
park your boat, come in, sit down.
So if I come in
Right.
at that park level.
Andy,
Stay.
if you need to go do the.
Yeah, maybe you should, well,
Oh, okay. Fix that then.
we're gonna see if we can bring it up on the screen.
We'll see if, Attorney Cole figures that out.
IT guy we use.
There he comes.
Oh, good, we get the experts here. You don't need the idiot to do it.
You said it.
Ouch.
Maybe we can get another job at Land Tech.
Got it.
There it is.
Okay.
Much better.
Now you gotta zoom out.
Is there a way to zoom out? Yeah.
You just turn the knob, the
Yeah,
round
it's
knob
this guy?
on the right side, or left side,
Yeah,
you say.
up top.
Other side, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Which is it?
We were gonna zoom out.
Other way.
Other way.
There, it's-
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now move it over.
All right. And how do you hit the, can I laser this thing? Just hit this button?
Nice job, Bill. Wow, that is a weird design. Oh, attacked by aliens.
So, yeah, if you want to just show us where the exact area
You
is
can
we're
po-
talking
you can
about.
point
Alright.
at the,
So you see the boat slips are here.
Yep,
This boardwalk's already poured, if you guys have been over there during the
Can
live.
we tighten it?
So that's a,
Can
that's a,
we
that's a sidewalk there.
focus it?
And then there is a sidewalk here
uh-huh.
that goes up to a ramp. This is the ADA ramp. It goes, this is the ramp that just got poured today, actually. And then here's the sidewalk here with the opening. Okay, and I think that says it's an 8-foot opening on your sheet there.
Yes.
All right, and then here is the other opening. This is actually a 10-foot opening there. And for example, in Sun Prairie, if you've been there, it's about a 22-foot opening from where it is. So it's not huge, but there'll be a receptacle there with again signage. But this is all fenced. And we had other gates. This was a gate. This is a gate here. That was open initially, but we put that gate there so nobody could sneak here because we would not be able to see them running drinks to their boat. So we did put a gate there. And then again, the only one is here and then here, which, you know, it makes just a ton of sense, I think. And it's supposed, you know, in the winter time, when people are out there on the ice rink and they want to come in for lunch or dinner and yeah, I mean.
So all of your tables are right along that top.
Yeah, and this one, I think, so I looked at this the other day. I don't want this overcrowded out here. I want it to be nice and comfortable as well, and maybe do some other, my architect just put all these chairs in here. This is what, you know, this is not the ultimate design of these tables. But this one would consist of maybe some Adirondack chairs that take up a bigger space, a little table for some appetizers, and then some tables, of course. But like these tables here, I'd probably request a variance here for 60 again, just because I don't know what all will fit here until we really do it. But when we figure out some of these other these bar stools and all that stuff, I mean, it makes some sense. And then again, too, we have an app where people can order food from their boats. So there'll be boat side service, and I'll have people carrying out to-go containers, up to the boats, and having a gate to deal with 2 bags in their hand. I mean, I go to a lot of places, I've studied for years, and very rarely do I see totally enclosed. I mean, I don't even know if I ever have, to be honest. And so it's that welcoming factor, I think it just creates that openness of that whole concept of the community park and all that stuff as well.
So we're looking at the closing hours here and the gate and the variance for the number of tables and people.
Yeah, he does not
Correct.
need a variance for the gates. Since the
Oh, okay,
code
since
doesn't
it fits
require
it, okay.
anything, that could just be approved as is.
So we could, unless we wanted to make some change, we'd just leave it at it as is. So the
But
two
we need
things,
to, wouldn't we need to make it clear that we're requiring fences except where he has the openings as per his design?
Well, that's what he's proposed.
Right.
I suppose if you didn't require it now, he could put them in and take them down later.
Right, yeah. Just, I mean, it's kind of the point of having permits with conditions and stuff.
okay.
So.
So that's three things we're talking about. Alderman Moore?
Well, I guess I would say, in terms of hours, I don't see any point in having a different closing, well, actually, I do see a point in having a different closing time for this level, because the park closes at 10 o'clock. So if there isn't going to be a gate, frankly, the only way that I could see that, and this is something I think, Tom, that you would have to weigh, but the only way that I would see that this would be okay to be open past 10 would be that if in fact did have gates, because that would allow us to close the park and people to still be having food or drink on your patio when the park's been closed. But without the gates, we can't effectively close the park at 10 o'clock.
And I think I respect that. I mean, I don't know if anybody else has a comment on that. I think a lot of people are adults. I think that would be definitely one thing that I would put on the sign as well. Park closes at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. Absolutely, whatever, it should keep no access past 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. on the parks. But generally, I know our clientele, they're adults, they're gonna, I don't think they're gonna, because there's a gate or not a gate, that they're not gonna go out there because of that. But yeah.
How does this work with your event space?
So that lower level is the event space, and that'll be just something that we review with when our proposals are. The ordinance of that. I mean, again, I guess that might be one thing. On the weekends, most events are on the weekends. If somebody spills out there and has a conversation, at 10 o'clock, I mean, I don't know. That's something that I guess we have to talk about. If you got,
Because this is a little different than just a restaurant closing. You could have a wedding reception or something
Yeah.
down there that
But
goes till
it's
midnight.
weekends
or-
is 12, isn't it?
It's midnight,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's why I'd like to just mirror it for both. I mean, to protect us on the weekends or when there is a wedding or something
But we've
like
been
that.
talking about doing it differently because it's on the same level as the park.
Well,
Right.
you could put a gate in.
Well, yeah.
There's two openings, are there not?
Yeah.
So if we gated the one that approached the park and didn't gate the other one,
I still think, I still think without any, if you don't have a gate, I think you have to have a maitre d' standing there. You have to have a staff person standing there. I mean, I agree, Tom, that, there's a million places that are open, but the places that I've frequented, they've got either a staff member or something, because I think having it wide open, without a staff member and without a gate, among other things, it's a gigantic liability. You're next to a body of water with, two racks of canoes and kayaks. To me, it's just to have zero, not to mention the fact that if there's a wedding there and it goes until midnight, that says to me that you're going to cut the band off at whatever hour, even if a band's inside, you think that's not gonna impact residents?
We won't have bands inside for weddings. It's,
You won't?
yeah, I mean, there's still a restaurant upstairs, so I've already talked, we've had people that have requested. This is a little bit different than like in Sun Prairie, we have the barrel room that's separate,
Right,
so it's a little bit easier. Here, we're gonna be very precise on the level of noise parties can have. And if they wanted to have like a DJ a little bit later, maybe, and the restaurant's closed, because there's a stairwell, where that music can float through there and screw up the atmosphere for the whole restaurant. So our event space is not gonna be designed for a big party down there. And that's what's hard to stress it, and I understand you're thinking about worst case, that's what your job is, so I get it. And I totally empathize with it. And so, so it's hard for me to stand up here and say, this won't happen, but I think I'm requesting no gates for the welcoming factor.
I think Alder Kitzler and then Alder Thomas.
Could we foresee a situation where you have gates and then during certain hours, you can keep them open? And then at 10 o'clock when the park closes, you close them?
Yeah,
As a somewhat of a compromise, that during daylight hours, you could have them open?
Yeah, I could look at that. I mean, gates are $3,000 a piece too, but that said, if that's something that's required to make this body happy, I guess I can look into it. They're being built right now, and the fences, we had to get our fence in, them knowing that if we're gonna add something, whatever, we try to fabricate whatever we needed to do.
Just an idea
Yeah.
for people to percolate.
Alder Thomas.
Yeah, this is, it is exciting because it's one of the few eating, dining places, unlike Monona. Where do you go? You can't. But to believe that everybody who, I don't want to say the boating crowd is boisterous, but there's a group of them that are very boisterous.
Yeah.
If you live on the lake, you know this. And they are going to be boisterous, and they are going to spill over into the park. And when you have wedding receptions, they get boisterous. And it's people having a good time. It's not anything malicious. It's just people having a good time. And I think that, I agree with Nancy that we need to take some precautions. And if we can, I think Andrew has a great idea that there are times, I don't agree with the welcoming. I love gates and fences if they're attractive. If they're attractive, walking in is welcoming. So I don't agree with that thing, and I think that to err on the side of sensibility makes more sense, at least at that one that faces the park.
What
Yeah.
about the closing hours? What do you think?
Why would we have it any different than upstairs?
I'd like to, I don't know if this is do we have an amendment on the floor? We don't, all right.
No.
I'd like to make
Should we make
a
amendment
motion,
just dealing
rather.
with one of these things?
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion, actually, I'm gonna try to make a sweeping motion and wrap it all up, how's that? I'd like to make a motion that the hours are the same as the upper level, which is to say the 10 PM close and a 12 on weekends. With the stipulation that gates are put in both locations, with the notion that after 10 PM the gates will be closed.
I'm writing, hold on. Okay, go ahead, go in. Trying to write your motion.
Yeah. So same hours as the upper, and,
Seating capacity.
oh, in the seating, I have no problem with upping the seating to, what did you say you wanted, 60? I don't have a problem with upping the seating either, so we can up the variance to 60 for the seating. Hours the same as the upper patio, which also mirrors the tasting room. And that gates be put on the east and north side, park side, to be closed at 10 PM when the park closes.
Second.
Bill, did you want
I was just gonna point out, I don't know if you all are aware, but Waypoint
Yeah.
has a large patio.
Uh-huh.
That, I don't know, I'd say it's next to a park, we have that sort of drainage way in it, but it's similar, it's very near a park, it's very obviously near water, it has boating with the marina. They have a patio that this body did not require fencing all around. There's open areas there that aren't gated and aren't fenced,
Mhm.
just for
Yeah.
whatever it's worth.
Mhm.
Alderwood?
To that point, though, I think it's not really similar. Lotus Park, to get there from the Waypoint patio, you have to walk all the way back the length of the building and around, and here you just, just step right out there, and there's a park. That's part of the attraction of the site. I guess I'm fine with the 60 seating, I think is what the number was, 60. I would rather require the closing at 10 and not require the gates, so I'm gonna vote against this motion,
Can I ask
for what it's worth.
just a question for a point of clarification? If people, does the patio directly abut the park, or is there a sidewalk that goes in front of, so like, people are going to be going out that way anyway? Right? There's a sidewalk in
When
front of
it's
the patio
open.
between the park and the patio.
But the park closes at 10.
Right, so if people are leaving the restaurant, what precludes them from then walking on that sidewalk by the park on the other side? I mean, I just don't understand why having a gate would make any, they're gonna need to go on the sidewalk to get to their cars.
Well, the
Correct.
cars will be on the other side,
Cars,
most likely,
yeah, cars will be
on the
outside the
Broadway side,
There's
right?
already cars on that
So
side.
the only
The
option
sidewalk
to get
is
out
the
would be to
park.
go up the stairs into the parking lot. They wouldn't need to walk out on the sidewalk in front of the patio on the park side.
I think we should have all taken a field trip to this,
Yeah.
really. I'm not sure. Can anyone answer that?
I guess technically anybody can walk in a park after the hours, it's just whether
Right.
it's regulated or not. So to answer your question, certainly somebody could either go out the gate or go out the entryway to walk up the park. Or walk, on the park sidewalk to the street parking. or whatever.
They would be violating ordinances if
They
they're in
would
the
be,
park.
yeah.
I mean, nothing would physically stop them, but it would be illegal.
But people would, in theory, could need to use that sidewalk between the patio and the park to leave the restaurant.
Wouldn't need to.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Alder Thomas?
As I think about this, what is there about the park that would be more attractive to someone to go over there and have a drink than stay outside at Buck and Honey's? Is there anything is there a beautiful fountain that's going to draw people to the park? What is there about the park that people would want to go to after dark when they could sit outside and
There's a fire pit,
Yeah, fire pit,
there's a
there's
ice
lighting.
skating rink, there's
Lighting,
there's
yeah.
all kinds of cool lighting,
But
seating.
it's after 10.
Huh?
It's after 10.
there's no lights, you couldn't skate? And you're not gonna be using the
You're saying
patio.
after 10.
You're not gonna be using the patio probably if it's cold enough for ice.
That's fine.
That's a good point. Can I talk? Is that okay?
Sure.
Mention a comment, maybe a compromise, similar to what we talked about earlier. Once a year, I've got to come to this and request a patio permit, it sounds like, correct? What if we maybe showed a little bit of leisure through this first season? I mean, it's only going to be 2 or 3 months without gates, and check it out and see what it looks, feels like, smells like. And if there is any issue, of course, you could require the gate being put up next year.
We have this amendment that has all this stuff in it, so would it be better to deal with each of these things separately? Possibly.
As with Annie's before, I mean, Nancy has a
Right.
motion on the floor, so she can certainly withdraw it or make a friendly amendment, but absent that, she's entitled to a vote on her
Right.
motion.
I'm just wondering if it'd be better to come to a decision on each thing separately. I understand what you're trying to do, but
Yeah.
Since we've had more discussion since then.
I guess I could withdraw the motion and we could do it separately if you want to do it separately. Is that the easiest way to do it?
Would that be easy? I'm just thinking it might be easier, but it's totally up to the council, obviously. To you, I mean, just break yours up into 3 separate pieces
Okay.
and discuss them each separately? Is that,
So I move that we create a variance to
So
go
you're
to
withdrawing?
Wait,
withdrawing the original motion.
okay.
Hold on.
Sorry. Withdraw the original
Let's just
motion.
take them one at a time then.
I
Okay.
know, it's crazy.
Let's take
Okay.
the 2 easy ones.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve a variance of up to 60 seats for the patio.
Second.
Okay, any discussion about that? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Or
Okay.
amendment is approved.
Now I'm gonna make I feel like they're connected for me, but my second motion would be that I'm gonna make a motion that the patio hours of the first floor are the same as the patio hours for the second floor.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
But for me, I can't make that motion without, I personally want the gates.
Make that motion first,
Make the motion for the gates first.
and then you'll know.
Oh, come on.
Okay.
We're so close.
Good job, Priscilla.
Sorry.
I move that, I move that,
Well, do you need to withdraw your other motion?
okay, I'm gonna withdraw that motion then, sorry, Joan. And I'll make a move for the gates first, which is, I'd like to make a motion that we have, obviously, movable gates, which is to say gates that actually work. They're not permanent fencing, they can be opened or closed, to access, enter or exit this patio area.
Are you saying after 10? Or,
I thought you were I thought you wanted me to separate out the gates from the hours.
I know, but do you want the gates open open until 10 and then closed, or?
They can, as far as I'm concerned, they can be open till 10. My motion would be that that the area can be open until 10.
Is there a second to that? No? I guess motion fails for want of a second then. Does anyone else have another motion about gates? And if there is no motion, then we just, Doug,
I'll move that we require fencing, but allow the openings as proposed by the applicant.
I would second that.
any discussion about that?
I think the
Alder Thomas.
suggestion of if there's a problem, we revisit it next year is a good alternative, because if you don't need them, then it's a lot of expense.
Anyone else? Okay, all in favor of Doug's motion to require fencing but not the gates, and essentially the plan as it's proposed right now. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No?
Okay. And then the last thing is the motion about the hours, is to amend it in terms of hours. Does anyone, Alder Thomas?
I move that we make the hours of the lower patio consistent with the hours of the upper patio.
Is there a second?
All right, second.
Alder Cour seconds. Any discussion? So that would make the hours of the lower patio closing 10 on the weekdays, 12 on weekends, and nights
And-
before holidays. Anyone? Alder Kitzler?
I would just say, as appropriate, I think we should reach out to Breakwater and let them know.
I agree with that.
Me too.
Anyone else have anything to say? All in favor of Alder Thomas's amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Now, we'll go back to voting on the original motion as amended. in 3 areas. Okay, so all in favor of the original motion, is there any more discussion about the original motion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes as amended.
Thank you all for your time
Thank
and your
you.
civic duty.
And
And we're
what I
very
was-
excited to be,
Doug,
coming
Sorry.
to
is it
town.
what I was-
Well, we're looking forward to it.
Ken.
Look forward to our special part.
Yeah.
On
Actually,
weekends, too?
July 10th is the
Yeah.
VIP grand opening party. You guys will all
Yeah.
receive
I
invitations.
could
So
look.
July
if
10th?
you want to put that, as long as there's not enough major weather.
Like a flood.
That is the plan, yes.
Good to know. All right, next item under new business, consideration of resolution, and thank you.
I think you're gonna have more problem with people
Thank
from
you.
apartments
Consideration of
wandering down
resolution
to the-
19-6-2358, reauthorizing CDA Renew Monona Housing Stock Renewal Loan Program put forth by the Community Development Authority. And Brian, are you going to address this?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I put in your packet a memo that kind of outlines the highlights for the request to reauthorize the Renew Monona program. As you'll recall, this is something that we operated about 5 years ago. The funds have expired. We now have additional funding through an extension of a TIF district that allowed us to capture TIF funds for affordable housing purposes. So CDA has been working with a consultant to put together kind of a revised and revamped program guidelines and application for this program. Just some of the highlights to note, we're changing it to a 2% interest loan that would be amortized over 10 years of the term of the loan. That's a change from the previous iteration, which was a 5-year balloon payment. The reason for that change is actually we got some feedback from the local banking institution saying that if you've got a balloon payment requirement, that makes an applicant ineligible for other financial assistance programs like WIDA or Freddie or Fannie Mac. So we wanted to make that change so that if somebody's applying for this, for example, for first-time homebuyer assistance, they would also be eligible to apply for these other programs. Eligibility for this program is assessed not on income, but on the assessed value of the house. And we would run that analysis at the time of application, so we'd know the most current data on that. But just for reference, as of January 1, kind of eligibility threshold would be a property at $254,000. That anything below, at or below that would be eligible to apply for this program. In terms of changes for what would be eligible expenses, we've carried over the 3 main categories from the last iteration. So first-time homebuyer programs, home system upgrades, so like electrical, mechanical, plumbing, those type of things to increase the efficiency of the home. General energy efficiency measures like window replacement and installation improvements. We have added, new to this program, an allowance for renewable energy technology installation. CDA had a lot of good discussion about that because there are not comparable other programs out there that we could tap into. We felt it was appropriate to allow Renew Monona to be used for that as well. And then the last category would be the major rehab, so addition of a story or a floor on the building, kitchen remodel, those type of things would be eligible. And then lastly, environmental remediation, so asbestos removal, lead paint removal, those type of things. One thing we did also add to this program is that there would be a requirement that the applicant works with a local financial institution as part of participation, in part to keep the money kind of flowing locally within the community. You'll note on the material that there are 2 banks that have kind of agreed to participate, Monona Bank and Starion Bank. That's just a function of who I've been able to reach and have conversations about the program with. I do have feelers out to the other institutions, and we'll continue work on trying to get them informed of the program and then hopefully signed on as a lending participant. And then we would update the application to show all of the different institutions that would want to participate as a lending institution. So with that, I'll pause and take any questions that you might have.
Right.
Doug?
So, just for my own clarification, I feel like I probably should know this, but the requirement that they work with a local lender, that's, I mean, we're going to be, will we not be loaning them the money, but we're requiring, we're going to try to work with those banks.
It's twofold that we want to include this. One is to keep the money circling local rather than shipping it to a bank somewhere else. But second, the requirement is that the bank helps us underwrite and service the loan, so we're not having to be involved in that. That's the reason why we want them to partner.
So that we're not getting into banking business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
And excuse me, but they don't have to, just as a fault, they don't have to get into the banking business except for the piece that we're doing.
No, we're not, the city
The
is
city's not. The reason why the city wants to partner, have the applicant partner with a local financial institution is that that institution will then service our loan, so we don't have to get involved.
Correct,
in that.
but if my 50% is coming from me, I don't have to go through some local bank if I've got resources somewhere else. I just have to go through the local bank to get the 50% that I'm getting from the city.
Exactly.
Is my point.
Yep,
Okay,
yep.
got it.
Alder Court?
Just a question about how this is going to get promoted to residents.
Yeah, so in a number of different ways. I've had conversations with a couple of local realtors. I know that there's a kind of a vlog, if you will, that they've been pretty interested in wanting to do a follow-up story on this program. We'll use our traditional social media and Facebook and website to promote it. We'll pass along all this information to the local financial institutions that will participate so that they can market that to their clientele. And I'm open to any and all suggestions on other places the council thinks it's appropriate to market.
Alder Court?
We have several remodelers that are based in Monona. I would urge you to reach out to them.
Sure.
Because I think they may know people who are looking at projects, and particularly because of the tight turnaround of when they get the money as to when the project needs to be completed. I think timing and planning that is important because the demand for remodelers is really tight right now. So,
Alder Thomas?
Be sure and send some information down to the senior center.
good plan.
I mean, the library is also another good place of distribution, but someone could go down and talk to the seniors or post a flyer that you could put up, and you could also put a flyer in the library.
Absolutely.
Assume we'll have a flyer of
Yep.
some sort. Anyone else? Alder Moore and then Alder Kitzler.
I mean, and you may have already mentioned it, but obviously, Kevin's very, very open at the Community Herald. I would assume that this would be worthy of an
Yeah.
article.
This-
And that's
yeah.
a given.
Yep.
Alder Kitzler?
I know we already addressed this, and I really like the idea of keeping it local as far as banks, but I think we definitely need, and this is a statement of the obvious, that we definitely need more banks involved. And then the second thing is, what do we define as local? Is Chase Bank local, even though it's a national company?
Yeah, so it's any bank that has a physical presence in the community. So if they have, brick and mortar facility in Monona, I've sent out feelers to them already.
Okay, perfect.
And they might, the challenge is, one of the reasons why we don't have more respondents is that even though they've got a brick and mortar space in town, the mortgage office, for example, might be in Madison or somewhere else. So that's,
Anyone else? Alder Moore?
Can you explain the exclusions? I'm just wondering about the things that are excluded and why. I mean, some of them make sense
I
to
think
me,
they're
but I'm
supposed to
just.
be more permanent improvements, aren't they?
yeah, so not stuff that could be, hypothetically moved to a different location. For the energy efficiency things, again, it's stuff that's kind of integral to the structure of a home. We didn't want to fund tear downs or anything like that, so it's, for the major projects, it's, additions to the house that's going to make it more livable long-term.
Isn't the roof kind of a permanent thing? How can that be moved to another house?
Sure.
We define that as maintenance, so like a water
Yeah.
heater, air conditioner, roof. I think even siding was debated, whether that would be in gutters. That's more maintenance of a house, not
There was,
necessarily operating.
there was some discussion about whether to include roofs, and personally, I kind of felt like we should, because it's such a major expense. Granted, it's maintenance, but, that's kind of, part of,
Right.
if the roof doesn't get replaced eventually, then the value of the housing stock declines, so.
Then I guess, just as it relates to the exclusions too, I just, with water heaters, I appreciate now, given that first explanation. So I'm assuming that that's a deciding fact. For instance, I could see somebody going for solar hot water heater, which is a big thing right now for a lot of people. It's very efficient. So I'm assuming that if it was a solar hot water heater, because it's a water heater, it would still be excluded, even though it's got the renewable technology in it.
I mean, we didn't parse out what the term definition of water heater is. I mean, I guess
Okay.
somebody can make an application and the CDA could consider it.
Okay.
How much do those cost?
I couldn't, it obviously depends on the size of the hot water heater, and I honestly can't tell you off the top of my head.
regular
Yeah, but then you're, yeah,
water heater?
Yeah.
or-
Permanent
Anyone
water,
else?
permanent water, regular water heaters have gotten way more expensive than they used to be.
Yeah, but they're, I don't know, it seems like we paid 700 or 800 or something, or I can't remember, fairly
Can
recently.
easily go quite a bit more than that, but.
I just.
I just wondering how much people would want to go through all the hassle of
Right.
getting a loan for half of it, and a
Right.
bank wanting to deal with a fairly low amount like that, I don't know.
Right.
Alder Moore?
So I just wanted to say, aside from the nitty-gritty questions, I just want to thank the CDA and Alders Wood and Kitzler for working on this. I know I brought up a number of things related to the renewable energy that they revisited, and I really appreciate that. And really appreciate that the energy efficiency and the renewable energy is taking really a forefront in the whole program. And it's reflective of a commitment we've already made as a community, and so I just want to generally say hear for the overall proposal.
Anyone else? Okay, well, this will come back next time for approval, so. Next item, consideration of Resolution 19-6-2359, authorizing a request for proposals, RFP for contracted assessment services, put forth by the city administrator.
This, as I mentioned in my memo in the resolution, our current contract with Accurate Appraisals ends at the end of this year, so it's time for us to go out for RFP for contracted assessment services. So what I've got included in the packet is, I think what's a final version of the RFP that, assuming approval at the next council meeting, we'll send out starting in first part of July to have responses come back by first part of August. Staff will take a look at those and then review them with the Finance and Personnel Committee to get their opinion on who we should select, and then bring it forward to the council for final authorization on whatever firm we would select. So just looking to move that forward so we can get that process going.
Questions? Comments? No? Okay, well then we will move on to our closed session. Convening closed session under Wisconsin Statute Section 19.85, paren 1, paren E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. This is regarding the Yahara Commons Development Agreement. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Somebody want to be the second?
Second.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Wood,
Aye.
Alder Court,
Aye.
Alder Thomas.
Aye.
Alder Groupie.
Aye.
Alder Moore.
Aye.
Alder Kitzler.
Okay, we are in closed session. All right, we are back in open session. So, let's see, the next item is reports. Let's start with Alder Kitzler.
No report.
Alder Moore.
Yes, I have a couple of things. One is the resident energy survey is still open. We're encouraging people to take that survey if you haven't already. Also, you may have heard that we have recently signed a contract with Renew Wisconsin to do a group buy of solar for your rooftop, both businesses and individual residences. And there'll be 3 information sessions over the next 6 weeks or so to learn more about that opportunity, make solar more affordable than ever before. The first session is this coming Thursday on the 6th from 6 to 7 p.m. at Aldo Leopold. That's June 6th at Aldo Leopold. The second one is at the library on the 25th of June from 7 to 8. And the third one is July 16th at Rosie's from 5:30 to 6:30. For more information or to make sure you get updated with information, please go to Facebook Sustainable Monona, or and like us, or stay tuned to the city website. Thank you.
Alder Groupie. Alder Thomas.
No report.
Alder Clure.
The summer reading program opened June 1st. Make sure you sign up. Whether you're a kid or an adult, you can win fancy prizes. So join us.
All right. Sorry, you should have shut that door earlier. Alder Wood.
Just, you may have seen the display of the plaque, the historic marker that's going to be installed eventually at the 4009 Monona Drive, 4007 Monona Drive location. It's upstairs in the library. That's it.
City Attorney Cole, did you have any announcements? City Clerk Andrews?
Tomorrow is Board of Review. It's too late to submit a intent to object, but you can show up and the board may decide, based on your reason for being late, choose to listen to your case. So you're still, you still have that option. So think about that. And I did attend a legislative review board hearing regarding several election issues. So I will hopefully have some news up or down about direct balloting option, ballot efficiency option coming up here. So.
Okay. I would like to thank everyone for participating in the parade, and those of you who were able to make it to the Aldo Leopold event last Thursday. Both were great events. We hope to cancel the July 1st meeting, so we're still on track to do that. And finally, I was going to congratulate Brian on his certified public manager certification, on achieving that. So I guess we'll put it on air anyway. And 300 hours is a lot of time to spend on something like that, so it's great. Okay, we'll move on to appointments. There are 4 appointments tonight. Katie Burns-Kaiser to the Community Media Committee, effective immediately through April of 2022. Karen Torino to the Distinguished Service Award Committee, effective immediately to April 2021. Linda Lasuski to the Facilities Committee, effective immediately through April 2022. And Joe Fontaine has been appointed by the Police and Fire Commission as the member of the Public Safety Committee, effective immediately through April 2020. So is there a motion to approve those
So moved.
appointments?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Appointments are approved. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? We are adjourned.